but I don't agree with everything you said. So mostly we agree, but.
I have just come out of Arne Slot's pre-match press conference ahead of the second game in a week against Brighton, and as usual we had some very interesting things to say. Not so much about the team news or the contracts, but about Brighton themselves and how much he's paid attention to them before he was the Liverpool manager and since. Obviously I asked a question of my own, and to be honest I think that was probably the most interesting answer he gave all day. You'll hear a lot more about that when I get back to the lab though. Welcome back to the lab. We are here ready to dissect the latest pre-match press conference from Arne Slot ahead of the second part of Liverpool's double-header with Brighton, and we're going to do things a little bit differently this week. Rather than going through everything he said and pulling it apart piece by piece, we're going to stick to the main bits, the big hits, my 3 top takeaways from this press conference. So we're not really going to go into all of the team news. There wasn't anything new there. Everybody who's out now is going to be out and to remain out until after the international break. He was asked again about the contracts. Vinny O'Connor tried to find a new way of asking the same old question, but that one was batted away. So none of that really matters. What I'm going to give you is 3 things I think are the most important for you to learn from this press conference. So number 1, Brighton playing them twice is not that big a deal. He was asked about this unique idea about how we are playing the same team twice in a week, and well, basically it's twice in the space of 4 days. And Arne Slot didn't seem to think it was that rare. He referenced the idea of European playoffs where you often play the same team in quick succession on a couple of occasions. But he also just said that in football you're kind of used to sizing up an opponent over time, so it doesn't really matter whether or not it's 2 times quick in succession or not. He also referenced the fact that obviously it's different players who are going to be playing on Wednesday as compared to Saturday. I think that's the same for both teams. One bit of interesting things that he did say within that answer though is that he said the players make the game, so the tactics might be the same across the 2 games from the managers, the ethos might be the same, but it's the players and their specific qualities that really make the difference. And considering the way Liverpool set out against Brighton on Wednesday with the 2 false 9s in Szoboszlai and Curtis Jones, I thought that was fascinating, because you'd think really stylistically you'd expect to say, well, that is different. But then later on Arne Slot referenced the idea of Diogo Jota playing as like a 9.5. So if you compare that and what he does with dropping deep and maybe drawing defenders out of position with what Dom Szoboszlai was doing against Brighton, then maybe they aren't too different, and maybe it is just the particular qualities of the players that make the difference. So when he's drawing up his game plan for Brighton, or maybe when he's doing the scouting of what Brighton are like, he's essentially really concentrating on who specifically is going to play. But I guess that makes it a little bit more difficult because managers don't like to give away who they're going to play before the game. I mean, frankly, who could have guessed that Szoboszlai was going to be in the central striking position? Certainly not me. Okay, so thing number 2, there has been no official changing of the guard at left back. Arne Slot was asked about Andy Robertson and Kostas Tsimikas, particularly in light of the fact that Andy Robertson played the full 90 minutes in the League Cup game against Brighton, which leads people to believe that Kostas Tsimikas will get the start in the Premier League game, and whether that represents a change in the natural order of things. In Kostas Tsimikas' time at Anfield, he's very much been the backup with Andy Robertson being the starter. And does this mean that there has been a change? And I think he was also asked in reference to the fact that there's more rotation within this position than others, which was something that Arne Slot pushed back against. He said that there's been plenty of rotation in other areas. He referenced left wing, for example, as being the Gakpo-Diaz axis being somewhere where there's been lots of rotation. But the main thing I thought was interesting in his answers, he referenced once again energy and fitness. And he said that Andy Robertson didn't have a full pre-season. He had hardly any pre-season because he was injured over the course of the summer. He got injured during the Euros. So he was already lagging behind in terms of his fitness. And during that time in the early weeks when the pre-season was going on, Costa Tsimikas was playing and playing very well. So a combination of the fact that Robertson wasn't really fit enough to play in pre-season and Costa Tsimikas made a good impact in pre-season has meant that now it's been a little bit more an even split between the two. Something else that I thought was fascinating was that he mentioned the fact that Robertson playing 2 games in a week in terms against Arsenal and against Brighton will be beneficial for him in terms of building up his fitness. So clearly Arne Slot doesn't think that Robertson's yet at that peak physical conditioning to be able to play regularly for him. And I think we have to acknowledge the fact that every time that Costa Tsimikas has come into the team this season, he's performed really well. So that's probably why people are asking the question whether or not there's been an official changing of the guard. Slot kind of distanced himself from that idea though. It will be fascinating to see, particularly when we come to the games against Manchester City and Real Madrid, who gets the nod, whether or not either of them play both, or it's a case of one of them one and one of the other. I guess that's when you really see who's the number 1 and who's the number 2, if there is such a thing. And thing 3 is based on my question about Jarrell Quansah. So before we get into it, let's have a look at what I said.
Hi Arne. I wanted to ask you about something you said with Sander Westerveld in that interview where you talk about trying to inject energy and confidence into the training sessions. Obviously in a time like this where it's really an intense period of the time where you maybe don't have as much time on the training pitch because of travel and recovery, how important are the players in terms of trying to reinforce that message? I think particularly the instance of Jarrell Quansah, who obviously didn't have the kind of game that he'd have liked against Brighton and may not necessarily get a chance to get on the pitch again for quite some time. How important is the leaders, the Joe Gomez's, the Virgil van Dijks, in helping to inject that confidence back into him?
They are important, as every teammate is important for every player, but I don't agree with everything you said, so mostly we agree, but this time I think Jarell played a very good game. The only issue he has at the moment, that if he has a moment that is not perfect, it immediately leads to a goal. That's what happened in this game. He was, in my opinion, unlucky. But and I know you cannot judge a player on leaving those 2 moments out because they are so vital for a result. But he is getting better and better and better, and he was already really good. So for him, it's that last step maybe to make, which you've already shown in the past, that he can play a game without making this small mistake. So he's a bit in an unlucky period when it comes to, if he makes a small mistake, it immediately leads to a goal. But if I look at his overall performance, I really liked what I saw. He was confident on the ball. Also, when we conceded that one, it was not out of, I'm afraid to make a decision. It's just by taking initiative, and these things can happen, in my opinion. So I liked the way he played. Like I said, he was a bit unlucky with the second goal as well. But that is, for me, that was not his game. So I wouldn't say he is not able to play in the upcoming days or weeks. He is definitely in competition with two centre backs that are hardly making any mistake at the moment. But apart from the mistakes, I think he played similar to Virgil and Ibu, with a lot of confidence, playing the ball out from the back, defending really well. So for me it was a good performance, but a bit unlucky in the end.
So, thing 3, Jarrell Quansah is still in contention to play in the big games. Now, obviously, Arne and I have had a lot of fun and a lot of jokes in recent weeks, but this is one time he mentioned that he was disagreeing with my assessment of Jarrell Quansah as feeling like he was maybe lacking confidence towards the end of the game. I didn't specifically mention the fact that he was needed to be substituted, but obviously the 2 goals that Brighton scored in that League Cup game were, well, he was at the scene of the crime, let's put it that way. It's hard to say the second one was his fault. He was just trying to get his way of a ball that was coming towards his own goal. But when put in the context of being taken off at half-time against Ipswich, and even the unlucky own goal in his last appearance in the League Cup against West Ham, considering that he hasn't played in League and Champions League in between that, you wonder whether or not his confidence is going to get knocked, because he's thinking, well, I've made another error here and I'm not going to get a chance to put it right on the pitch for a long time. But Arne Slot gave a really robust defence of Quansah in the game and pointed out the fact that obviously a lot of the attention is going to be on what happened at the end of the game, but throughout the early part of the game he played really well. He mentioned the fact that his use of the ball, coming out and bringing out defence was really important, and you can tell that the things that Arne Slot has been saying to Jarrell Quansah, these are the things that Slot was happy with, and that he's unlucky at the moment in terms of every time he makes a slight error, it could be turns into a goal. I think that's a very fair point that we need to kind of zero in on. The fact is that everybody makes errors on the football pitch. No one is perfect. You could go out there and dissect every individual performance and make a 2-hour fail compilation if you were so way inclined. And I know that some of you out there are that way inclined. But the point is that every time Jarrell Quansah has made a mistake, it's led to a goal. I think of the Bruno Fernandes example of last season against Manchester United. And when you're a young player and you're just trying to find your feet within a team and within a squad, those things can be really damaging. But I was pleased to hear Arne Slot be so effusive in his praise and his defence of Jarrell Quansah, and the fact that he would go so far as to say that it's not necessarily the next League Cup game the next time we see him. He has not ruled him out of playing Premier League and Champions League games in between now and then, which will be obviously really good for him to hear. I think we have to remember the fact that this is still a 21-year-old kid who was playing for Bristol Rovers not more than 12 months ago. So as much as the standards are always going to be high as a Liverpool player, I think it's always important to remember that he's going to have ups and downs. Any young player is going to have ups and downs. And frankly, it's very rare you get someone as young as him playing as a centre-back for a team like Liverpool who are going for the big trophies. If you look at a lot of the great centre-backs of English past, I think of Rio Ferdinand, Sol Campbell, Jamie Carragher, even Joe Gomez in the current squad. All of them started at fullback and then moved their way into the centre, because that means that your mistakes are less likely to lead to goals. But that is the hardest part of being a centre half, is that there's very little margin for error, similar to being a goalkeeper. So those are my top 3 takeaways from this press conference. There was another line of interest that I thought I wanted to just touch on. The fact that when asked about Alexis McAllister and his performances for Brighton and how they differ, Slot mentioned the fact that he'd seen a lot of McAllister because De Zerbi was someone who he paid a lot of attention to, which I thought was fascinating in terms of how his tactical styles match up between what De Zerbi likes to do and what Arne Slot's looking to do. So maybe that's something to look for in the future. But we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for joining me as always. There'll be another one of these after the next press conference. In the meantime, don't forget to find me out there on Substack. There'll be a brand new article based around the Brighton game coming out on Monday. But obviously, if you aren't subscribed already, what are you waiting for? Click the button. And don't forget to like it and leave a comment as well. All of these things feed the algorithm monster, and that monster is hungry. Thanks a lot. We'll see you soon.
My God, that was brilliant.